Welcome back to the Project Podcast. I'm your host, Connor Lewis, and today I am once again joined by Carter Jones. Carter, how are you today, man?
Great. I'm really excited to talk about what we have planned for today. Recapping the NBA playoffs a little bit and also getting into Tom Brady. So it's going to be exciting.
Well, I think that's a good place to start. I think we should just jump into NBA. The NBA Finals are about to happen Thursday. This episode should be out before then. Thunder Pacers Finals. I don't think anyone saw this coming. I had Thunder Celtics. How surprised are you by the Pacers making the NBA Finals in this fashion, especially?
I'm very surprised. On the earlier episodes that we talked about the playoffs, I completely, talked about the Pacers a lot, which, I'm going to stand on my word. I don't think they're as good of a team as it is. I think the East is very weak, especially with the Celtics getting hurt as they did. But, I mean, they still, regardless of the fact of how weak the East is, they still are better than 15 teams in half of the NBA, regardless of that. So, it's remarkable what they've done. They've been playing so well, they've been playing fast, and they've kind of just like, I don't want to say defied the odds, but they've just proved a lot of people wrong. Pascal Siakam getting back to the finals after I think 6 years now, after
Yeah.
2019 with Toronto, and also Tyrese Halliburton being named most overrated. Completely proving everybody wrong. It's insane what he's doing right now. Like, Trey Young's always been named most overrated multiple times by NBA players as well. He's won that award, I guess, in a sense, multiple times. I think both of those players are similar to the fact that they're realistically aren't that overrated. If anything, because of that, they've become underrated. Tyrese Halliburton's been great, uh, but there's you don't gotta say much for OKC. They're legit, and I think they're gonna win this series regardless. But there's not a lot you have to say about them to that amazes you of how they've made it here. It's just almost expected.
I mean, with the Thunder, it's just they have forced themselves into like all-time rankings as far as teams go. I mean, they won 67 games. They dominated the first round easily. All right, second round went to 7, sure. Then they just, other than game 3 against Minnesota, they just dominated that series too. And they made Anthony Edwards they ended the Michael Jordan comparisons with Anthony Edwards, at least for now. At least for
For
right
now.
now, those comparisons can be laid to rest. The Thunder's defense is just so good. It's the best defense that I've seen in a team in my lifetime, I think. Like seriously, like collectively, the way they use traps, the way they use double teams, the way they're running their pick and roll defense. No other team has what they have, and what Sam Presti did that was so smart was just go get a bunch of guys that are like athletic and lanky, like your Jalen Williams, who's like 6'5" but has a long wingspan. Caruso is like 6'3", but he can guard. He's guarding Jokic in tough scenarios. In Game 7, he's guarding Jokic and locking him up. It's like what is happening, and it's just unbelievable what the Thunder have done. And I'm anti Thunder. Last year when Dallas beat the Thunder, I was over the moon because nobody thought Dallas would win that series. But now that the Thunder have finally made it, I mean, I just can't help but congratulate them because this is what they've been waiting for. I mean, they had all sorts of experiments. They had the Russ KD that didn't work. They had Russ KD Harden that didn't work. They had Russ and Paul George that didn't work. They had that weird Chris Paul, Gallinari, Shea Gilgeous, Steve Adams lineup like a couple of years ago in the bubble. It didn't really work. And now they're in the finals. And I don't think I would have seen this coming 3 years ago. But how do you feel about the Thunder as a whole?
They're a really good team, and I saw, I don't know what sports broadcasting channel, but they compared the Thunder of now to the Thunder with like KD, Russ, and James Harden, like comparing them who would win. And they said that they thought the Thunder of now would win. And I might have to agree with it, just solely on the fact of their defense. Like, and you wouldn't really expect it. Like, you look at those guys and you think they're like a really good offensive team in a league full
Well, they
of.
are.
Yeah, well, they are, but like you think, like you wouldn't expect them to be known for their defense at times as well. But they, they
Okay.
really
Yeah.
they really are as well because like I mean their defense is great. Chet and Isaiah Hartenstein like just anchoring the defense at times. And then they have like some like Lou Dort, Alex Caruso, just phenomenal. Like some of the best defensive guards in the NBA, even with Alex Caruso's age, but Lou Dort especially. Like they're just such a good defensive overall team, and that's been a problem for a lot of teams. You know, the team that's played them the best in the playoffs so far has been, you know, um, Jokic and the Nuggets because it's Jokic, and it's really hard to stop. And that's why I personally thought that, you know, the Knicks have a better chance against OKC than the Pacers. And obviously the Pacers beat them, and they might be a better team. But matchup wise, I like the Knicks better just because they have Cat. And if OKC plays, um, Cat's better than Miles Turner, and
Yeah.
that's what my kind of overall basis is against that. And I think you know OKC's defense is just so good, and it's gonna really just swallow up. I think the Pacers, and the Pacers have to run if they want to do that. But if they get forced into like half court offense, like it's not going to be a series. Like they have to make sure they run because if they don't, they're not going to win the series. But regardless of the fact, I think it's going to be very exciting to see what happens. It's going to be more of like a how many games can the Pacers stay alive than how many games can they win. I think if that makes sense.
It's a good way to put it. No, that's a very good way to put it.
Because I mean, like no one really expects them to win. No one's expecting them to win a single series in the playoffs. If we're being honest, I mean, even from the first round, people had Bucks winning that Dame or no Dame.
I had that too, honestly. I think.
Yeah,
I think I had that too. So
but regardless of the fact, like props to them, they've played phenomenal. So but it's all gonna be they could upset OKC just as easily. They've upset the other teams they've played in the playoffs. So we just have to wait and see.
here's my thing with the OKC of now and the 2012 Thunder. I just don't think it's a contest. I want to get back to that real quick because I just don't think it's a contest. I think the 2025 Thunder whoop the 2012 Thunder. I just don't know how this is close. First of all, totally different time. I know it was 13 years ago. Their league was much slower. If you look at the Thunder's roster, they only had three guys in double-digit scoring: Harden, Westbrook, and Durant. Nobody else averaged more than 10, other than those three in the whole regular season. That's ridiculous. I get it, a totally different time period. But then when you consider the depth that the Thunder have now, you have guys like Kason Wallace and Kendrick Williams just coming out here playing like 10 minutes and still giving you like a really strong 10 minutes that make you realize, these guys have some depth. They have guys. You have Aaron Wiggins. Who would have thought like he'd be like important like a little bit? He's kind of important to the team. He's playing like 10 minutes a game in the Minnesota series. And everyone's like who is this guy? It's like it's just one of those things. You have Isaiah Joe who can hit threes. It's just a very deep team. And it's their defense that is their biggest strength, but it's their bench. I mean, Shea Gilgeous can drop 30 all the live long day. That's awesome. He's very talented. The foul baiting stuff, that's a different conversation. There's definitely something there, but he's so talented. It's unbelievable. He's in that Minnesota series. He averaged 31, 5, and 8, and it's like nothing. Like people aren't even really talking about it. Like it's just kind of normal that he's averaging these numbers. As far as this Indiana Oklahoma finals, first of all, it's a finals for the real NBA fans. It's not a finals for the casuals who want to see the Lakers or the Celtics or the Warriors. This is real basketball we're about to see. I still think the Thunder are going to win. I don't think it's going to be very close, but I think there will be some great runs by Indiana if they get in transition. Like you said, you're absolutely right on that. And even if they do get in transition, Thunder's guard defense is just too crazy. If they start doubling Halliburton with Caruso and Dort, I just don't know where they're going to go. Nemhard's not guaranteed to, or it's not Nemhard, excuse me, Neesmith is not guaranteed to drop, what, 5 threes in like 10 minutes or whatever he did against New York, like that devil magic bullshit.
Yeah,
Like that theory is very wacky, if you ask me.
crazy.
But my point is, like, I just don't think, I think they did catch lightning in a bottle, Indiana, but I still think they deserve to make the finals. But I just don't think it's gonna be close. I just think that Oklahoma's got this one in the bag, and I just don't think it's gonna be relatively close at all. And I'd like to see Indiana win, of course, but assuming everyone's healthy, I'm gonna give you my prediction. I'm just gonna say Thunder at 5, and I think Indiana wins Game 3.
I completely agree with that. And you know, just to be a realist for a second, for OKC fans, I wouldn't expect to see this type of depth from a team anytime in the future. It happens with championship level teams that go this far or win it, regardless with the amount of depth they have, is that players will start to feel like they're worth more money. And I would completely agree with a lot of these guys that have proven themselves that they do deserve more money, and that will probably lead them to another team. The Celtics, like they compared OKC's depth to the Celtics this year. OKC has way more depth than the Celtics, if we're being completely honest. I mean, the
Yeah,
Celtics had Peyton Pritchard, Sixth Man of the Year, but if we're being real, this OKC team is so deep, it's insane. And you know, if players really want to run it back, they totally could if they wanted to. But some guys want to go chase it back and they want to get some money. So if you're an OKC fan, don't expect them to be worse, a lot worse next year. They just might not have the same guys they have just because you know a comparison I'd say is Bruce Brown. He went to go get a lot more money after the Nuggets championship. And he's a role player. I mean, he's a very key role player for the Nuggets in that series, but he wanted to go get more money, which I thought was well deserved. People didn't love his decision, but regardless of the fact, that's probably going to happen to at least a couple of the guys in this OKC team, which will shake it up a little bit. But they have to win the championship for those guys to necessarily get that um, level of entitlement first. So it's going to be interesting to see. But I also agree OKC in five. Pacers might be able to get like game two, game three, like you said. It's going to be. I think it's going to be definitely a series for basketball fans, like not just NBA casual fans. I like that take a lot too. By the way.
I agree with your take. I just think we're in a totally different time in the NBA where there's no such thing as a real dynasty anymore. I think just based on how cap space works and all that, no team is guaranteed to be good in 3 years. No team. I like the Thunder are not guaranteed to be good still in 3 years because it's just how the NBA is. It's so very competitive and people are willing to jump around so much. And the Bruce Brown comparison is perfect. The same thing happened with I think KCP. He also left Denver
Yes.
to go to Orlando, I think, for a huge paycheck. And I think you're right on the money. Like you're telling me Isaiah Joe won't go to Detroit for like 16 mil a year. Like I could totally see that happening. Like
Yeah,
something
for
along
sure.
those lines. Maybe not exactly, but like things like that are going to happen just no matter what. That's every championship team. And I think in the history of basketball since free agency was made, every team, every role player is looking to get a big paycheck. Like I don't know, just throwing a name out there. Like this is very random poll, but like Ron Harper from the first three-peat, he left. He left the Bulls. He didn't have to. He could have stuck around, but he left. He got a big paycheck. I don't remember the team. It was probably San Antonio or something like that. But they gave him a big paycheck. I know I don't remember it. It was probably not
No,
San Antonio, but
that grinds my gears that I can't remember it too.
either
Um,
way,
yeah,
it's something that's been happening since the '90s. Literally, like that's proof since the '90s that this has been happening. So it's not. I think it's guaranteed, and I just don't think the Thunder are guaranteed to be a dynasty. I'm not saying they won't. They have so many draft picks. They have Nikola Topic, I think his name is. They're just kind of sitting on that. Like he's just somewhere on like the bench. I think. Like I haven't even seen anything from him, but he's just around. Who knows if he's good? Like it's just one of those things. But like God forbid one of the big three of the Thunder get hurt, like a major injury. We're talking. Like who knows? That could just tailspin, and the Thunder are gone in 3 years.
yeah,
So,
for
but
sure.
I do think you're right. I'll give this back to you, and I'll let you speak. I agree with you that the Thunder are not going to be as good next year, especially if they win the title. 67 wins back to back is in this NBA impossible. I just don't. I will not believe it until I see it. Even like the Celtics won a ton of games last year, and then it just felt like they were worse this year. And I know they lost, but even in the regular season when that was happening, it just felt like they were just not the same team. Even though they kind of had the same lineup, it just didn't feel right. But I'm gonna give this back to you if you have any last second thoughts.
Like a random hypothetical that I've always thought of, kind of, is some sort of an NBA format where there was no cap space. And I think MLB has the exact same way where like teams don't have a limit on how much they can spend. If you've ever watched Moneyball, it's a great baseball movie, and it kind of talks about that, how like the Oakland A's, like they don't have a lot of money because they were a new franchise at the time, didn't have a lot of money, so they kind of had to just scrape by, and they end up being really good. But in a sense, you could see teams like the Lakers and the Celtics be like um, the Dodgers and the Yankees right now. And it's just like a crazy hypothetical. Do I think the NBA should do it? No, there's no reason why they should. But it's kind of just like it shows like how different sports, like the little things you don't realize, how if like you switch things around, how different the formats could be. Like if the MLB had like a cap space for teams of how much they can spend on players, like it would be completely different format. So it was just like a random hypothetical that I've always thought of. But yeah, like there's not much I can really say towards a whole lot of the stuff. If you're an NBA fan, I'd really recommend watching the series. It's going to be good basketball. Box score isn't going to tell you how the actual games go. That's all I got to say. So
I think that's perfectly put. And I want to talk about NBA and TNT and how that's officially over. But Moneyball, great movie. Everyone should watch that, even if you're not a baseball fan, because I know so many people that don't like baseball that love that movie. Brad Pitt is great in that, by the way. He's incredible. He's going to be in F1, and he's actually driving race cars, which is incredible. I'm so excited. I'm over the moon for that movie. But Brad Pitt is great in Moneyball, and everyone should watch that. I think it will teach you so much.
For sure.
But to move on to the NBA on TNT, the NBA on TNT is now officially over. I guess maybe they bring it back in like 10 years whenever the contract's over. But the NBA on TNT is over now, and there's mixed feelings about it depending on where you stand as an NBA fan. But I think everyone can agree that it was culturally for NBA fans, it was kind of a big deal. Like this is something that like in 20 years we're still gonna reminisce about, and we're gonna be watching like funny compilations of like the halftime show. I just think the joke that Charles Barkley tells about his wife wanted to get a new watch, and he was like, "Why? There's a clock in the kitchen, or something like, or there's a clock on the stove." Like, we're just gonna be thinking about that forever, though. Like, that's one of the things that we just think about forever. But the argument can be made that, and this is my opinion. Maybe it's a good thing we move on from the NBA and TNT. It has been around for a while. It's been around for over 15 years. They had Chris Webber on it early on. I think it was like right after he retired. I think it's going to be interesting because we're going to have Blake Griffin, we're going to have Dirk, we're going to have all new people. Michael Jordan's a part of it somehow, which I don't. That's a different conversation about how Jordan's involved in this, but I just think that this could be a good thing. I think we're just not giving it a chance because it's new, and I know people are going to miss Chuck and Shaq and Kenny Jet and Ernie, but I think we should give this at least a chance, especially if they're watching the games, because there's a lot of controversy because Shaq famously often just doesn't watch the games. Ernie is known to watch the games all the time, and Kenny Jet Smith does too. And Barkley just doesn't give a shit half the time. And I get it; it's like kind of like a comedy thing a little bit, but it's like I feel like the analysis is pretty bad, at least of the modern NBA stuff. Whenever they talk about current stuff, I just feel like they don't know what they're talking about. It's like this is kind of an older example, but when Christian Wood was kind of killing it, and Shaq just had no idea who he was. And it's like this guy's averaging like 19 and 8. It's like, can you please watch like a Pistons game? Like it's like your job. You get paid a couple million a year to watch basketball games. Like I just don't understand it. But how do you feel about the closure of the NBA on TNT?
Mixed emotions, I'd say. It's like those guys, you grow up watching, like at least when you're like born around like our ages, in
Yeah.
a sense we kind of grew up watching those guys when it came to NBA. Just very like recognizable faces to most NBA fans, regardless of if you knew them before, but you definitely know them now. Um, but to a point, like I also completely agree with the analytical side of it. I love one of my favorites is probably Kenny the Jet Smith. I love him a lot. He brings a different type of outlook in those four. You know, but I think the best thing about them together was kind of the way they flowed together.
Mm-hmm.
They were just like it's really just like you throw four best friends together on like live TV and just let them talk about what they want to talk about. In a sense, obviously that's in no way to discredit them, but it's kind of just what it was. And like
Yeah. No,
they
you're
they
right.
knew what they were talking about when it came to basketball, but they just didn't seem like, especially when it winded down towards the end, like Shaq and Chuck especially, just didn't seem like they necessarily cared about the current state of the NBA and really putting some time into it when it's their job. And there's not a whole lot to say when it comes to that though, because I would hate to um, put them down, obviously, and I don't want people to think that I'm doing that because I still hope to see those four somewhere today, regardless after this season talking about the NBA, just because it's just like such a memorable thing to look at. You hope to see new content in the sense of them. But the new faces, I completely agree. I'm excited for, and I saw someone talking about this today, and I don't know if this will actually come true. I'm assuming most real basketball fans know King of the Fourth Quarter, Kenny.
Mm-hmm.
He, in my opinion, is the most underrated NBA fan and NBA analytic in a sense in the game. I think that he needs to get way more spotlight in ESPN or some sort of like companies to take him in and have him go on live TV just because of like the whole, his whole take on basketball. And I am kind of taking from a video that I saw today, but I'm just spreading the word of what he was trying to spread as well, of how Kenny's whole brand is enjoy basketball. So like that's like what we need in the NBA, and it kind of felt like we didn't necessarily get that from Chuck and Shaq to a point because they didn't
Yeah.
even know some of the guys, but like we need new faces like Kenny to be in the spotlight. And maybe these new guys that are going to be on live TV now for the NBA could be a lot better, but I think it needed to come to an end at some point, and it could have gotten even worse down the road. So I'm just excited to see new faces, and hopefully it adds a spark to it again.
I think it's weird because King of the Fourth Quarter was weirdly important to like our generation. And like he was a YouTuber, and he first got going when YouTube was still like a weird thing where people were not really sure what it was, and people were kind of making money off it, but kind of not. And people were, it was one of those things where nobody really understood it completely. Like now we kind of get it. We understand like YouTubers make money this way, and there's advertisements and all that. But I think what you're saying is true, and I think it's more important to get people that actually know the game, like Kenny, like King of the Fourth Quarter, over like big names. Like just because it's Charles Barkley saying it does not necessarily make it true. Like it's just the fact of the matter. And I don't know how good the new people are going to be. Again, I know Dirk, and I love Dirk, and I'm very excited for that. And Blake Griffin's going to be a part of this, and I don't know what their analysis is going to be like. I don't know if it's going to be entertaining at all. But I think it's good to we get a new perspective. And I agree. I just don't think Shaq and Chuck really like gave a shit, to be honest. And it's unfortunate. It's just this is your job, and you don't really seem like you care at all about it. It's like what are we doing here? Like I don't understand. Like I just feel like they just were taking up time that should have been used for somebody else. I actually liked Chris Webber a lot when he was on it. Like I watched old clips and I thought he was pretty good, but you know, the stories from Shaq and Chuck and Kenny are good. Don't get me wrong. I think those are the good parts. And then the actual games happen. If it's not the Lakers or Celtics, they don't really care. And I think my last note about this, and then I'll give it back to you. We need more positivity. Like I just feel like the NBA atmosphere, and this is all sports really, but I'm more an expert on the NBA. It's so negative between the Jordan LeBron debates that are just talked about to death, and I will never, ever, ever, and you can only do this. I will never do a Jordan LeBron episode on here. Never. I'm just tired of hearing about it. I just don't care. I just don't. I don't want to have the discussion. It's a generational thing. I don't care. I don't even want to talk about it, and I'm never gonna. That's why I'm never gonna even do that, just because it causes arguments, and it's not doesn't make for interesting content. Like those have been talked to death, and then you have Skip Bayless and you have Stephen A. Smith going at each other's throats. It's just like what are we doing? It's just none of it's interesting, and it's all just for clicks, and you can just tell, and that is the worst part of it all to me. But I'm gonna leave any before we transition to the next segment. Any last second thoughts? It's all yours. The floor is yours.
Yeah, I would feel bad if I didn't shut this guy out because his video is really good. But Dean
Go ahead.
Simon NBA on TikTok, just go search him up and watch this video that he posted. I mean, it brought a whole new outlook to me. Like I've realized over time playing basketball myself and watching the NBA, like it has become so negative. Like the hate the refs get, regardless of how
Yeah.
many missed calls the refs have made, like big or not, like it's always ref this, ref that. Like it really is the players. Like there's very few times where it's actually the ref's fault for how a game plays out, and people don't actually realize that. They just kind of want to put blame on somebody, and that's just another way of how it's become so negative. And I think what you kind of talked about with Jordan and LeBron, overplayed agendas and different takes just need to stop. Like we talked about the Bronny thing a couple episodes ago, and obviously no shame to Bronny, he can control that. And
Yeah.
same thing with Jordan and LeBron. Like they're really not. I mean, they've probably said a couple things here or there, but they're not really fueling it as much as it's just the NBA fans are feeling like it. Like there could be so many other things that we could be talking about, especially positive wise when it comes to the NBA, like how bright the future is with the young stars. But we choose to overplay old antics and old agendas that don't need to be talked about.
Mm.
And I think that needs to stop. And I think that could help the growth of the NBA, I would say.
And I think that could be holding the NBA media back. Like I just feel like that nobody really wants to talk about the Jordan LeBron thing anymore. Like I think it's just easy to talk about. It's easy to make conversation about that, but I don't know. If people ask me, I just don't really care. Like I just don't have like an argument. I don't want to argue about that. I'd rather talk about, you know, I would talk about the Knicks or something. Like I honestly, I don't know. Like I just rather talk about that. But as far as the refs go, to do a little bit of a baseball metaphor, it's the same thing. The umpires get blamed for everything.
Mhm.
They are humans. They're not computers. That's the point. That's why we have umpires and not robots. They're going to make mistakes just like refs make mistakes in basketball and in football. And I just think it comes down to that, and we forget that in any level of basketball that the refs get so much shit. And then you have the refs that are trying to become TikTok famous. And I don't know how you feel. I'm out on that. Like, I'm just
Yeah.
like, not everyone needs to be a celebrity. Like, I get it, but if you're not bringing anything to the table, like, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing here? You're posting 30-second clips of you like doing like a dance as a ref. It's like, get the fuck out of here.
Mhm.
Honestly, I hate to say it, but any last second thoughts before we transition into the next segment?
No, I'm definitely ready to transition for sure.
For our next segment, I guess the second half of this podcast, we're going to be doing the Tom Brady Hall of Fame. This is a little segment I put together essentially with the 25th anniversary of the drafting of Tom Brady to the New England Patriots. 25 years ago, that's crazy. I think it's good that we look back at his long, incredible career through 5 different lenses. It's easy to have a standard and a boring conversation about Tom Brady, but I think this can open up the floor for more interesting, more in-depth conversations because these are more specific things. So these 5 categories are best individual season, best Super Bowl performance, best playoff run, best Tom Brady story, and favorite what-if moment from Tom Brady's career. Now to kick this off, we're going to start with Brady's best individual season. So I'm going to let you go first on this one because I probably have something different from you, because purposefully, actually.
Let me make sure. 2011.
No, actually, I thought you were going to go 07.
Well, this season, statistics wise, is his best season. Threw for 5,235 yards, 39 TDs, and a 105.6 passer rating. This season, they went to the championship and they lost to the Giants, I believe, based on what I've seen online. Just want to say that if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but that is what I saw. This is like the Patriots have been known for having really good defenses, and I think this year was one of their down years when it came to defense wise. And I think Tom Brady definitely showed up when it came to that. He outplayed himself in previous years for sure, based on his stats, and he was just phenomenal this season. I mean, what I just said when it came to his stats shows it all. I mean, 13-3 regular season wise, lost in Super Bowl to a good Giants team. Like, he gets shame. Do you agree that that was the year they lost to the Giants? I don't want to be wrong about this, but
That was the year. You're right.
okay.
You're totally right. You're
I just
good.
don't want to be rambling about the wrong thing and then
No.
okay.
You're right. You're right. I know what you're talking
I
about.
searched up online, like I did my research. I just want to make sure. But like
I thought you were going to go 07. That's what I'm surprised about.
yeah,
You didn't go 07. But, yeah, no, I go with your thing because I don't even have
I
07
was trying
either.
to go away from what you were gonna do as well. I was trying to I don't want to talk about what everybody else thinks. I want to talk about some other
I
really
thought
good
the same
seasons.
thing.
Yeah.
I didn't even do 07, though. Like, that's the funny part. I
Well, it's gonna
didn't
be interesting then
purposefully.
for sure.
Okay.
Well, it's just like it was a really good season for him. But it's underlooked for the fact that he lost to Eli Manning, and it's unfortunate because another overplayed antic in a sense or agenda that people talk about a lot is the fact that he lost to Eli Manning in the Super Bowl. But you can only diminish the GOAT as much as you can until it comes to the fact that he has 7 rings and he is the GOAT of football. And there's so many things that prove that he's better than the things that prove that he's worse. Like that's what I'd say to people talking about him losing to the Giants in the Super Bowl. But regardless of the fact, this was such a good season for him. Just stats wise, and watch his games. You can like the 39 touchdowns are not just like lobs in the end zone. Like he's throwing darts and stuff like that. Like, it's a great season for him for sure.
So I went 2010 regular season, which is the season before. Now the stats are not nearly as good. Like Brady threw for what 5,000 yards that year.
Yes.
This is totally different. He threw for 3,900, which isn't super crazy. He threw 36 touchdowns, which actually led the league, which is weird. It's like now if someone led the league with 36, it's like what? But back then that was kind of normal. 4 interceptions, which was like the lowest for like any starting quarterback, as far as I'm aware. 66 completion percentage, which is good. 14-2 regular season record with 3 game-winning drives. He led the league in 5 major stats: touchdowns, adjusted yards per attempt, passer rating, QBR, and adjusted net yards per attempt. And during those 14 wins, the Patriots won by an average of 17 points. So 3 scores. every time they won, they were winning by an average of 3 scores, which is nuts. And they had the best offense in the league. Their defense was eighth, I think, in the league. And during the season, this is what I have: the Patriots, led by Tom Brady, beat prime Phillip Rivers, beat an elite Ravens defense. They beat the Steelers that made the Super Bowl. Prime Jay Cutler. They beat the Super Bowl champion Packers in that season. So they beat both of the Super Bowl teams. And then they beat the Jets, the last good Jets team, which made the playoffs. All in that season, which is nuts. Especially the Steelers and Packers part. The two teams that made the Super Bowl, Brady beat both of them. That's nuts. And I think that is where I'm going to pick here. Obviously, 07 is the easy one. And I want to go away from that because I figured that you'd go there. I didn't think that you'd try to outthink me, which you did, which is good. I'm glad you did. But I just think that this is such an interesting year because I think they got bounced in the divisional. And which is weird because so they win, so they get the bye weekend. I think they just get bounced in the divisional. I don't even know by who, but I just think it's such a fascinating year. Let me look it up actually. So yeah, they lose to the Jets 28-21 in the divisional after getting the bye week, which is nuts, which is just so weird to think about, especially because they beat them in the regular season. But it's such a weird weird playoffs, and then the regular season just really good, and Brady just had a great year. But do you have any other thoughts on your season that you picked?
Um, Not a whole lot on mine, but I really want to give credit to your season that you picked. You know, it's like people don't realize, like, I'm gonna specify in one thing is the interceptions thing. Like,
Yeah.
as a quarterback myself, I've had my own good years, my own down years, but like the 4 interceptions in a whole season in the NFL is insane. I don't want to throw shade on any people. I'm not going to call anybody out in current day QBs, but like you see it, like people can have 4 interceptions in one game. 4 interceptions in a
Oh yeah.
season is crazy. It's not just him, choosing not to throw the ball sometimes. He's just making like the right reads all the time, and it just shows like his overall IQ for like football when it comes to like those little stats that people just they just glaze over. Like they don't even realize it. Like that's legit. Like 4 interceptions, and I don't want to talk about it like he's throwing 50 touchdowns, but four
Yeah.
interceptions in a season, like you talked about, the least, if not one of the least that a quarterback's ever had. Like that's insane. And I like that pick for you a lot too. It's good that we're both not talking about like the his best overall season that people will think it is, regardless of our true opinions or not. But it's good that we both went a different route.
Yeah, I agree. And I just think I don't think there's any other quarterback where you can look at like multiple different seasons and be like that could be their best, but this could be their best, and that could be. I don't think there's any other quarterback, and that's what makes Brady so special. Is like I think 30 years from now, when people our age right now are looking at his stats, they're gonna look fake. They're gonna be like,
Yeah.
"There's no way he threw only 4 interceptions and they won 14 games," and that doesn't make any sense.
Hmm.
So because I think the stats are gonna be like similar. I don't think quarterbacks are gonna get that much better in 30 years, but I just think people are gonna look back and be like, those stats can't be real. It's like the Jerry Rice thing, where Jerry Rice's stats are just so unbelievable that people are like that can't be right. But I just think it's so interesting because maybe like Aaron Rodgers or Peyton Manning or Joe Montana have like multiple years that could be their best, but the list is short. I think it's fair to say the list is very short. So I'm gonna move on to his best Super Bowl performance, and I'm gonna start. And this might be the one you pick, but I just think it's got to be this one, and it's Super Bowl 51 versus the Atlanta Falcons. Yeah, and we can talk about this, but let me just read the numbers. 66 passing yards, holy shit. 2 touchdowns, which isn't a lot. 1 interception, only a 95 passer rating, and he threw the ball 62 times. And that doesn't seem like that is his best, but obviously everyone knows the story. Going down 28-3 at one point in time, and they were down at halftime 21-3, and then the Falcons score again, and then from there it's just balls to the walls. Brady's making the right play every time. I What do you remember about this? Obviously, you were pretty young, but like, what are your thoughts on this Super Bowl as a whole?
I have vivid memories of watching Super Bowls with my dad, especially when I was younger. Me and my brother and my dad, we'd watch Super Bowls, and I remember, being a younger kid in like elementary school, like it was a late night for me watching these games, and it'd be like a special thing for us to watch them. So, you know, at halftime, my dad asked us, like, "You guys just want to go to bed, or you guys want to stay up?" Because like we are all just discouraged at how it was, and obviously, being little kids, getting the choice to stay up late one night, obviously we chose to, and I'm so glad I did. Like, I remember doing cartwheels in my bedroom after this happened. Like, it was insane. Just watching the game, like you were just like questioning, like, are they gonna keep going? Like, because you didn't want to get your hopes up for it to all
Right.
come back just for them to lose. But like, it was insane. I don't know if you touched on this because I was checking off every single stat off my list when you were reading it. But also, most completions in a game, I think, also with 43. I don't know if that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a record,
that's
yeah.
that's insane. Like those
At least
stats.
in a Super Bowl. Maybe
Yeah,
not regular
yeah,
season,
maybe
but
not
Super
regular,
Bowl for
but for
sure.
Super Bowl, yes. Like, and
Yeah.
teams are known in the Super Bowl to take it easier when it comes to passing wise, especially if it's a closer game because they want to be conservative with the ball, and that's why they choose to run it more, unless like you have a godly quarterback like Tom Brady. But
Right.
it's very rare that teams will go in a hole this much, and that kind of proves the fact to the stats that he had when it came to his completions and balls thrown. But I mean, you watch that game back and you'll see like how insane it was. A lot of guys stepping up big in that game. Julian Edelman was great. Just like you got to watch that game back. If you're listening to this and you haven't watched that game, at least watch the highlights. It's insane. Like, and it's you don't realize like how crazy the comeback it is if you watch it now. But like when you watch it live for the first time, you'll seriously like. I remember how crazy it was when it happened. Like you just don't. Teams don't just do that, especially not when it comes to like the NFL with a deficit that much.
Here's a fun stat. At the time, he broke the record for most yards in the Super Bowl, which before this was 2000. Kurt Warner had 414. Brady has 466, and then the next year he breaks the record again with 505, famously against the Eagles. I just want to look it up to make sure that that was right, but yeah, that is nuts. That's just crazy. How many players can say they really broke a record, their own record in the Super Bowl? Like not too many players can say that. And Brady also has like a 15-yard rush that was kind of important, where he just randomly has that little like 15-yard like run that was kind of important in the second half. Like it kind of like helped the game a little bit and moved that shit along. And it's crazy because the strangest part about all this is we forget how good Matt Ryan was in this game just because he lost. And let me read Matt Ryan's stats real quick. 17 of 23, 84 passing yards, obviously much less than Brady. I get that. 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, a 144 pass rating, which is almost the highest you can get. And I'm not saying Ryan was better than Brady in this game because obviously Brady won, so in theory Brady is played better. This is a great game by Matt Ryan. He was killing it. And he didn't really have, I don't know if I want to say it like this, but I just feel like he didn't have the same running support that Brady had. I think Julio Jones is better than any receiver the Patriots had, but I think the running game, I just think the Falcons had a much worse running support than the Patriots. I don't know if that's crazy to say, but considering that, Matt Ryan had a really great game. And obviously Brady, 466 yards. Obviously the numbers are not the same, but I just think Ryan had a great game, and it's weird that we just forget about it. And maybe that's how we look back on Victor's history, but I don't know. Do you have any last second thoughts about the 2016-17 Super Bowl?
I'll just say this because I like Julio Jones a lot, but especially for the Falcons team as a whole. Obviously, I'm not a Falcons fan, but you had a feel for them. I mean, they had some absolute dogs in that team, especially Matt Ryan was great. He like it's unfortunate he couldn't win the Super Bowl, but I mean he was great that season regardless. Julio Jones is an all-time receiver, and you gotta put some respect on his name, and you gotta realize like just watch his highlights and you'll see how good he was. You know, he's just filthy. And I sometimes like I'll just see edits on TikTok of NFL players, and he'll be like one of those guys I see. So like obviously I'm so glad the Patriots win. I won that, and I'm not saying that I wanted the Falcons to win, but it's just tough to
Yeah.
see that they lost as a team. I'd rather see like a team like obviously we've never played the Jets in Super Bowl, but like something like that. For the fact like obviously I could care less with the Jets, but with a team like the Falcons that year with some of the guys they had, you just got to feel for them, especially for Julio Jones because I like him a lot. So
I just feel like the most underrated part of Brady and his career is that he ended like teams that could have been like dynasties.
yeah,
Like I feel like there's a timeline where the Falcons win 3 Super Bowls. And I don't think that's ridiculous. I feel like there's a timeline where the Seahawks, which I'll get to in a little bit, win 3 or 4 Super Bowls. I just don't think it's ridiculous to say that. And I just think that Brady kind of puts a stop to it because once you lose that first Super Bowl, it's hard to get back. That's the thing I noticed. And when you look back at history, like I don't know. I feel like after you lose your first, you may get back again, and then after that, usually you don't come back. Usually it's you lose the first and that's it.
Yeah.
Usually. I know that's not every single one, but I think that leads me right into Brady's best playoff run. And this was tough because I had a couple to choose from, but I hope we don't have the same one. I chose
Okay.
2014,
Good. Good.
and this is the one where they beat the Seahawks. Here's the 3 opponents that the Patriots played to win the Super Bowl. The Ravens in the divisionals, top 10 offense, the 6th best defense in the league. Joe Flacco was still elite, and Brady has a fourth quarter comeback, game-winning drive in this game. Already, that's the divisionals, and we're already like roaring. Next game, conference finals. They play the Colts. This is Andrew Luck pre-injury, so he's still really great. And then Brady just rips the Colts defense a new one. And then we ended off in the Super Bowl with the Seahawks, best defense in the league. Brady has 4 touchdowns, 300 yards, and he just ends what could have been a Seahawks dynasty, which I think could have been possible. Now, keep in mind, before this happened, Brady hadn't been to the Super Bowl in 10 years, or he hadn't won a Super Bowl in 10 years. It had been 3 years since he was there last time, which was against the Giants. And then this begins the new Patriots era with Edelman and Amendola and James White and all those guys, where they make the Super Bowl 4 times, they make the conference finals 5 times, and then they win 3 Super Bowls. And this is like, Brady was basically written off. Like, we were all kind of, at the time, people were kind of out on Brady. We're like, okay, he won his 3. He made the Super Bowl a couple more times. I think this is where he's kind of wrapping it up here. And then he just goes on for another, like, 8 years. And I just think that is a ridiculous line because not only it's the people you're beating, because you're beating Flacco, then Luck, pre-injury, and then Russell Wilson, but you're coming back after so much. That's like if Michael Jordan won his first 3, and then in 2003 he wins his next championship, basically. Like essentially that's the same thing. So that and to me that's what's so crazy about this because I can't imagine any other quarterback like having to wait 10 years to win their next Super Bowl. If Jalen Hurts didn't make the Super Bowl for many more years and then he wins it again in 2035, I think everyone would lose their mind. And this is a real reality. And this was Tom Brady's life at the time. So I'm going to let you have some space to give us your best playoff run from Tom Brady.
Um, Mine isn't necessarily based solely off of his stats, but it's more based off of like the smaller things you don't realize. It's his
Yeah.
2021 playoff run, and
Yeah.
this is his one with the Bucks, and he won this. And they played against the Chiefs in the championship, but he was 43 years old when they had this run. And that's like, quarterbacks compared to other athletes pro can go longer than most based on like, they don't do as much athletically wise compared to like,
Right.
point guard and basketball, but you're 43 years old and you're taking hits every single game, every single week. It's tough. So, to have the run that he had, I'll break it down for you. I'm gonna have to read very specifically here. In the NFC wild card, they played Washington. They won that
Mm-hmm.
31-23, so close game there. Then in the divisional, they beat the Saints 30-20. Then they played the Packers 31-26, and then the Chiefs 31-9. In that Chiefs game, it wasn't very close. But
I remember
besides
that.
that, every other game it looks to be in between 1 and 2 scores. You know, stats wise, it doesn't necessarily prove it, but everything else wise, it really shows like how good he was, obviously, and his age plays a huge factor in it. So I would say that, in my opinion, this is his best playoff run, based on the fact that he's so old and the teams they had to play were really good. But it's I would just say that I'd leave it at that.
Well, to counter off that, I would say, yeah, I agree. I mean, it felt like at the time that Brady might not ever retire, it's just a weird thing. At the time it was just like I didn't think that Brady could win again. I wasn't a New England fan. I knew a lot of people that bought Tampa stuff as soon as Brady went there. A lot of my family were buying Buccaneers jerseys, and everyone was a Buccaneers fan. Suddenly, it was a very strange time to be an NFL fan, especially in New England. But in the moment, it was just like I never really think Brady was going to win again. I mean, I like the Niners. I figured we'd win eventually, so and we still haven't, which is however many years later since I started being a fan, which is like 6. And now we're at a time where there's still rumors Brady will come back, and I think without that Buccaneers run, I still feel like that there was something there, and that if he didn't win that, I think Brady would have retired like a year earlier, and I feel like he would have just ended it a little sooner, maybe. I don't know if you agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he came back was a surprise in itself. Obviously, it was good that he reunited with Gronk when they did, but
Yeah,
it's definitely surprising that
and
he
Antonio
did.
Brown.
And Antonio Brown too. You know, we don't talk about him a lot anymore, sadly, based on how
Well,
he is
Theo
now.
Vaughn had him on. I don't know if you saw that. That
Yeah.
was a pretty good episode. That was very funny.
um,
That was hilarious.
but like, it's just it was almost a reunion in itself, and the fact that they won a Super Bowl was a cherry on top. Obviously that's what he was going for, but for fans, we weren't necessarily expecting that. But in a sense, like you kind of were, especially if you knew Tom Brady and like you knew like you really knew how good he was. Like, especially if you were a Patriots fan in the past, like you kind of like I didn't expect him to win another Super Bowl, but I always knew it was a possibility, regardless of his age, just because of like how good he was. In my opinion, he solidified himself as the goat when in his first stint with the Patriots, but I think he
Yeah,
just added on to his resume so much with this little part right here with the Bucks, and he only won one with them, but that one was meaningful, and his other years that he had there like were meaningful as well. So, it's like his time with the Patriots is what we're talking about, kind of, but it's his whole career, and I would say that his time with the Buccaneers is overlooked more than it should be.
I agree with that. I don't really have much to add, so I'm gonna give you my favorite Tom Brady story, and I just wrote it down because I think it's such a fun story.
Yeah,
Brian Hoyer, who was a Patriots quarterback for a couple of years back in the early 2010s, he told this story on a podcast. He said, "We played up at Buffalo, and we couldn't fly back into Boston because the weather was so bad, so we had to stay a night in Rochester. We drove there, and we all decided to go out to dinner together. Tom, being who he was, he usually couldn't come to a team event like that. We might be at a Capitol Grill, and he sneaks in the back door, and then people realize he's there, and he has to leave. But this was an impromptu at a dinosaur barbecue in Rochester. The entire team was there, and it turns into a beer chugging contest. You have linemen, you have Julian Edelman. They all think they're going to win this contest. Then someone says, I heard Tom is really great at chugging a beer. We don't usually get to experience him like this, but we finally coax him into doing it. He does it, and let me tell you, you, you couldn't have poured out the beer faster into a glass. It was unbelievable. He slams the mug on the table and puts both fists in the air. He walks away with a look on his face that said, You really thought you were going to beat me on this? And the whole place goes nuts. I just think that's a good story because it shows that Brady was kind of like a bro.
yeah.
You kind of just hang out with them, and it's like kind of cool. And then this one is something I saw on TikTok that I added. I had to copy paste it, but this is a Julian Edelman story. Very short. Me and Brady are training at the gym, and he has the location
This
of where
is
the
mine.
next.
This is mine. I won't.
Are you serious? Oh,
Yeah.
I'm gonna let you. I'm
Okay.
gonna let you have it. No, no, go
I was
ahead,
gonna let you
please.
go, but then I realized I kind of wouldn't have anything to talk about.
That's fine. Take
But
that.
it
Take
is a
it,
good
please.
story. So I probably won't have it like as like picture perfect read wise, like what I'm gonna say as
Oh,
you
that's
did.
fine. No, it's not a big
But
deal.
the basis of it was it's from Julian Edelman, and it's the season after they lost to the Broncos um, in the AFC Championship, I believe. And they were preparing in the offseason. It was February, I believe, and they were working out together. On the whiteboard, it had the location of the next Super Bowl, and Edelman was just kind of questioning him on it, and he said that's where we're going to get next year during this time. So I think that by itself it just kind of shows how good of a story it is, but it keeps going to the fact that Edelman says that he's going to help Brady chase Montana, and Brady replies back he's going for Jordan instead, and that refers to the rings that he was hoping to get, and it proves that he actually beat out Jordan, getting 7 rings as Jordan only had 6. But like that's just such like a it's kind of like I wouldn't say inspiring, but it's just like one of those ones where it's like it kind of gets you going and it makes you want to relive Tom Brady's career in itself. Just to show like he's like there are a few people that have like a dog mentality, and he's one of them. Like he doesn't back down from fights. There's like another little clip that he talked about himself when it came to his mentality about the NFL, and he said that he had no friends out in the field. he'd have friends off the field, but when he's playing, like he had no friends. And I feel like they're like people that remind me of that, like Michael Jordan. Like they remind me of each other. They're just like this, whether people think they're the goat and they're not, they're my goats, but that doesn't really matter. Like their mentality for the sport that they play, that kind of resonates with that. And Tom Brady's story that I just showed, it kind of shows like he wasn't just trying to go for Joe Montana's record; he's going for Michael Jordan. So I thought it was just like a very interesting and also like it was a good story to hear. I'd say, it's just like
I think it's. Oh yeah, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
I wanted to also say that that was on Julian Edelman's podcast, I believe, with Gronk. But keep going. What you were gonna say?
Yeah, no, yeah. That honestly, I'm glad we had the same clip because that's actually a really, really good story. I just think it's like you said, it shows his killer mentality. It shows that he didn't really give a shit, and he wanted to go for the highest level he could go. I'm surprised he didn't say I'm going for Russell. Honestly, I that's what I would have
It'd be
expected out of
crazy.
him. But yeah, but either way, he accomplished his goal, and I just think it proves that he's a man of his word, and that when he says that he says what he says he's going to do is he's going to do it. Like when he says something, it's going to happen. He's going to get that seventh ring, and that's it. And I just think that Edelman's such a good storyteller. Also, I think he's excellent at that. I think that's super. I think his podcast is actually pretty good. I think he has some really great stories. But as far as my story goes, I just think that it shows a different side of Brady that we're kind of not used to because he's so pretty boy now, and he's working out all the time, but like he wins a beer chugging competition against the rest of the Patriots. It's like how do you beat a story like that? And I don't even really know where I found it. It was from a long time ago. It's obviously from like 2010, probably, or 2011. But to me, it's just an unbelievably great story. And I don't know. And I do want to move on to our last part, which is our favorite what if moment of Tom Brady's career. And I want to start because I'm biased on mine, but I don't really care. What if Tom Brady signed with the San Francisco 49ers instead of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Now, this is a time where the Niners were just coming off that loss to Kansas in the Super Bowl. I remember it very well. And Brady just got locked up by the Titans that same year, 13-20 in the divisional round. Now, if Brady signs with the 49ers, what should have happened, they had a really good team already. This is before Christian McCaffrey. They had Debo, they had Ayuk, they had a bunch of guys. They had Kittle already. In which this was also a likely thing. This wasn't like a thing where it's like wishful thinking. Like this was in the cards. I remember it happening at
Yeah,
the time, and I remember kind of being really hyped because I wasn't a Brady fan and I didn't really like him that much. But then I was like, wait, we actually might get Tom Brady on our team, and we actually might win a Super Bowl. So I think Gronk would probably end up joining. I don't know how that works with him and Kittle. I don't know if Gronk just plays a lesser role, but obviously the Buccaneers will miss out on Brady and Gronk, so they still probably stick with Jameis Winston. If I had to guess, I mean, I just assume that they wouldn't make any moves. Antonio Brown is like an interesting piece of this. It's like I don't know if he really wanted it was Tampa specifically or it was Tom Brady. That part I'm still kind of uncertain about because nobody really knows. I don't think he knows why he signed with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but I think that because that year the Niners are really injured, they would go like 8-8. All that, and I think that Brady joins them. I think it doesn't make a huge difference. I think maybe they sneak into the playoffs. I don't think they win because again they're all healthy. But once the Niners are finally healthy in 2021, I think Brady makes that connection with his receivers. I think he wins the Super Bowl with the Niners. But the thing is, there is no Brock Purdy on the Niners, and maybe no Brock Purdy at all. Like the circumstances in which Brock Purdy played were pretty specific. You had your starting quarterback Garoppolo was injured. The backup was injured too. I don't even remember who it was at this point. And then Purdy was the only guy left, and everyone was like, "Okay, this is gonna be bad. We might as well call it a year." And then Purdy plays really well, and everyone's kind of confused. And I so obviously no Purdy in San Francisco if they have Brady, and they probably can't get Christian McCaffrey. I think just based off money because Brady got paid so
yeah,
much. But I think that Brady gets at least 7 rings, maybe an eighth. I mean, the team's pretty good. I mean, the team might be better overall than the Buccaneers receiving core, and that was a really good core. But obviously, the Buccaneers lose this whole what if because they're not relevant. Like, nobody will talk about them because they would only have that one Super Bowl from like 20 years ago, and they would be just completely irrelevant still. But I think it's so fascinating to think about these what ifs. This is my favorite part. This is the part I was looking forward to. That's why I saved it for
Mhm.
last. But I'm gonna let you give us your what if moment of Tom Brady's career.
My what if is, this is more just centered around Brady playing wise. If what if Bledsoe never got injured? And
Mm.
Brady is known for getting a shot because Bledsoe got injured, and he stepped up really well. But like, what happens if he never got injured? Does Tom Brady ever play for the Patriots? Does he ever play for anybody else? Because I mean, he was a late draft pick, regardless of the fact, similar to Brock Purdy, who ended up getting his availability to play as well. But
In the same way,
yeah,
almost
completely
like a
same
very
way.
similar way.
Mr. Irrelevant to go play. I mean, obviously Brady wasn't Mr. Irrelevant, but Brock Purdy was. But it's just kind of like, would Tom Brady be the GOAT? And I would say no. I mean, in my eyes, Brady may have played for the Patriots if this happened. He may not have. He may have gone to a different team, become a backup for a different team. Like, I don't know if the Patriots necessarily had a plan for Brady or anything else outside of Drew Bledsoe, because they didn't want Bledsoe to get injured, obviously, and they weren't banking on it. So, Brady was just there as a backup. He wasn't like a foolproof backup plan. He was just there just in case. And like, they didn't have a future planned out for him. So I don't know what his future would have been like. Maybe he got an opportunity to play on another team, but I would say that his legacy wouldn't be as remarkable as it is now, just for the fact that I think he'd start playing, if he ever did, way later on in his career. So yeah, that's my what if.
That's a great one, and it's completely different from mine, obviously, but specifically because of the time period, that was 20 years ago. Like that when that happened, that was over 20 years ago. So the NFL was obviously in a totally different place. So that just is like the butterfly effect. Like who knows what would have happened at that point with the league in general. I mean, if the Patriots are like average and they have Bledsoe and they're kind of getting by, and maybe they win 9 or 10 games some years, who knows like how many Super Bowls Peyton Manning wins or how many like Aaron Rodgers. It just changes everything. If and Bill Belichick's career is different because I just don't think that he's going to win. It was a very specific team that he got to be a part of with the Patriots, and he doesn't win nearly 6 rings on a different team. I just don't see it. Like I just don't. So it's weird to think about that, and it's weird to think about Brady not like obviously it sounds obvious, but him not being the GOAT, and it just sounds weird him not having that 20-year career that we're so accustomed to. That I just don't know where football would be in a weird way. Like New England football was pretty shitty before Brady. Like obviously we weren't around for it, but before Brady, can you really even name that many players from the 90s or 80s? I
I
can't.
can't either.
I really don't think I could. So it just shows like with every other like major Boston team, you can name like the major guys from the pre 2000s. You name people from the Celtics, the Red Sox, all live long day, even the Bruins really. Patriots, it's like they weren't really relevant, and they almost moved to Rhode Island. They almost moved to my state in '99, which would have been first of all that's a crazy one. That's not Brady related, but that's nuts. If like the Providence Patriots or something. Either way, I just find it so interesting to see because we'll never know, but it's interesting to think about where the league would be. Carter, do you have any like last minute thoughts before we wrap up for today?
I really want to shout out the fact that you said butterfly effect. I like that a lot. Just
Yeah.
that, like, I feel like I can resonate with that appeal and like outlook on things. Like, little things like that can just change the landscape of everything. I could talk about that for a whole episode. Like, I feel like I have looked into that a lot based on like the true basis behind it, but you know, not a whole lot. You talked about this before, and I would have been mad if I didn't say it, but I do truly also recommend the F1 movie as well. Damson
Yes.
Idris is going to be great in that movie, just like he was in Snowfall, along with the other cast members that are on it. But I've been thinking about the whole episode, and I wanted to put it in there at some point. So
I'm happy you said it, and it's also directed by I think Joe Kosinski, who did Top Gun Maverick,
nice.
which is one of my
Yeah,
favorite
for
movies.
sure.
By the
That,
way, I
that's a
love
really good
Top Gun
movie.
Maverick so much, and so you know it's gonna be good. If Joe Kosinski's doing it, you know it's gonna be electric. So yeah, everyone check out F1. It comes out in a couple weeks. Also check out Mission Impossible because Tom Cruise is in it and he's great, and everyone knows I love Tom Cruise. And do you have anything else you want to shout out for today? This could be like a cool
A little
segment,
shout
and
out.
an episode just give something random a shout out.
Um, no, nothing off the top of my head, but thanks for having me on. I'd say.
Yeah, Carter, thank you for being here, and to all the listeners and watchers from home, thank you for tuning in. I have been your host, Connor Lewis. I am signing off.